Advertising. Whether you enjoy the medium as an art form or just feel like it's an irritating interruption while watching your favourite YouTube channel, please like, share and subscribe, it's hard to deny that it's a necessary evil. After all, without advertising, we'd never hear about the shiniest new consoles, the daftest new peripherals, and the coolest new games. Admittedly, we'd also probably have a lot more money in our bank accounts come the end of the month, but that's by the by. There have been some advertisements over the years, though, that make us wonder just what on earth the respective marketing teams were thinking when they, 1. came up with the concept, and B. decided to plough ahead and put their horrible ideas into the world. For this list, we've scoured the archives to find the ads that were maybe considered fine at the time they were conceived, but when viewed with a contemporary lens are both ridiculous and offensive in equal measure. I'm Ashton from Triple Jump, and here are 10 video game advertisements that aged poorly. Number 10. PS Vita. We're kicking off this list with the first of several appearances from Sony, a company whose marketing department has had more than their fair share of controversy over the years, let me tell you. Following the moderate success of the PlayStation Portable, Sony launched its follow-up, the PS Vita, in 2011. It came with all the features one might expect from a handheld console, i.e. a touchscreen, buttons and analog sticks, but its USP was the fact that it also had a touchpad on the back as well. There were lots of ways this unique selling point could have been advertised, but Sony decided to go down the sexist route. The two-page spread found in a French magazine went with the slogan, "Touch both sides, twice the sensation," which, in and of itself, isn't so bad. No, the problem was the fact that they decided to accompany the tagline with a picture of the woman with breasts on the front and the back. When the ad reached gamers a decade ago, it probably provoked a chuckle. But in a post-#MeToo society where women are expecting the world to stop treating them like commodities and acknowledge the fact that they are, in fact, people, it just seems like a pretty crass way to sell your console. Number 9. Tomb Raider 3. We're sticking with sexism for the time being as we take a look at this Tomb Raider 3 ad from 1998. If you've played Tomb Raider, you'll know the protagonist, Lara Croft, is a woman of many talents. She's smart, pragmatic, cool-headed and keen to explore the world. Sadly though, many people failed to see any of this as they couldn't look past her appearance. Of course, the media didn't help, as Exhibit A here proves quite nicely. In this ad, a man is shown lying on his bed as his girlfriend poses in Lara Croft's outfit and asks him, "Are you sure you want me to wear this?" It gets worse when you read the blurb below, which assures men they won't have to pester their girlfriend to dress up as Lara for much longer, as the real one will be returning with new moves, new enemies, new weapons, new vehicles, and above all, sexy new outfits. Ugh. We doubt anyone batted an eye back in the 90s, but these days the whole thing is just icky. For one thing, it assumes that the only people playing Tomb Raider are straight men, which is obviously not the case, and secondly, it reduces Lara Croft, and all women for that matter, to mere sex objects, which is just super gross. Number 8. Sega Mega Drive Joystick. All the way back in 1988, Sega released the Mega Drive, or Genesis if you want to get North American about this, a console with a huge library of arcade ports and perhaps most importantly, Sonic the Hedgehog. Like its competitors, the Mega Drive came with a small controller, complete with a D-pad and multiple buttons, which was fine, but for gamers who'd grown up with arcades, it was a departure from what they were used to. Fortunately, Sega were on hand with the joystick, a peripheral that simulated what it was like to play games in an arcade. Though, if the advertising is to be believed, it simulated something else entirely. Indeed, this incredibly weird ad was splashed across the pages of Viz in the UK, and it seemed to imply that playing with the joystick was somewhat like playing with a certain appendage. Now don't get us wrong, we are all for an innuendo, but Jesus Christ, Sega, you have to be so blatant. We are sure that audiences of the time got a good laugh out of the ad, but looking back, trying to sell a peripheral by using phrases like, "the more you play with it, the harder it gets," and "now you're shooting all over the place," seems very odd indeed. Not that there's anything wrong with seeing to oneself, of course, just keep it away from your consoles. Number 7. Neo Geo. For years, video gaming was viewed by the world as a male pastime, and so it's unsurprising that most advertisements were geared towards selling games and consoles to men, and in particular, straight men. Even with that in mind though, we can't help but feel like this ridiculous ad is just too much. If you're unfamiliar with Neo Geo, it's probably not all that surprising, as the console never soared to the heights of the SNES and the Mega Drive, mostly due to the fact it cost a heck of a lot more. Still, that didn't stop SNK Corporation from trying to peddle the thing, and clearly they got the sex sells memo and just decided to run with it, without stopping to consider if subtlety and nuance might also be needed. This ad from the early 90s shows a scantily clad woman complaining that her husband doesn't want her anymore since he got his Neo Geo. What's particularly weird though is the chap behind her is holding the console's controller in a rather strange position while playing a game that's weirdly phallic. We're sure this ad served its purpose when it was in circulation, but we're just glad that these days you can't just stick boobs in a penis sponsor in a magazine and call it an advert. Number 6. PlayStation 2. We've seen some bizarre things in our time here at Team Triple Jump, but Sony's line of weird bordering on disturbing ads for the PS2 really does take the cake. We can only assume the marketing team down at Sony HQ were going through some sort of mental breakdown and/or drug experimentation phase when they came out with these absolute monstrosities, because there is literally no other explanation as to why the heck they thought these were a good idea. I mean, look at them. What the heck does any of this have to do with a PlayStation 2? We can't speak for how people felt about these ads at the time, but clearly they worked, as the PlayStation 2 had sold 155 million units by 2012, making it the best-selling console of all time. These days though, the reaction to the campaign is somewhere between confusion and disgust. We're not sure which one of these is the most distasteful. The chap sniffing triangle-shaped panties, the woman getting frisky with a bunch of fleshy hair-covered buttons, or whatever the hell is going on here. I mean, we know naughty stuff sells, but we can't imagine any company in today's market, no matter how many hallucinogens they've been on, considering such a bold advertising campaign. Number 5. 3DFX. We've all got that one mate that bought themselves a gaming PC and thinks they're better than everyone else because of it. Yes, Barry, your fancy rig may well be able to run games at 1 trillion frames per second, but my PS5 only costs 1/5 of the price and won't be obsolete in 3 months. So, it's not just PC owners that think their platform is the best though, as there are some PC companies that like to peddle that notion as well. A prime example of this is a 3DFX print ad from 1999 that reads, "There are 2 types of gamers in this world, the ones who still play on consoles and the ones that have actually seen breasts." We're sure this went over fine at the turn of the millennium, but looking back, it feels like a pretty ill-advised statement. Firstly, not everyone who plays games is interested in those particular appendages, as, shockingly, video games appeal to a wide variety of people. And secondly, how insulting is it to imply that women are only attracted to people based on their gaming platform of choice? Oh, sorry mate, you're handsome, funny, have a nice job and volunteer for charity, but I don't see an Intel Core i5 processor anywhere around here, so I'm gonna get going. Number 4. Nintendo 64. For years, the world has told men that the absolute worst thing they could do is behave or dress like a woman. Fortunately, this culture of toxic masculinity is diminishing, but you've only got to look back a few years to see examples of media that ridicules men for feminine behaviour. Case in point, one particularly weird Nintendo ad from the year 2000. The whole thing starts off quite pleasantly. A camera swoops into a family home as a father talks lovingly to his son about how there's several things in life that are more important than money. However, things take a turn when it's revealed the dad is wearing makeup and a dress, and he asks the boy how much it'll cost to keep that fact from his mother, right before the ad goes on to imply that the boy's silence can be bought with Nintendo games. Back in the day, it wasn't uncommon for cross-dressing to be used for comedic effect, but as time has gone on, most of us won't accept people being made fun of for what they wear. That the implication it's okay to blackmail others so that you'll keep their secrets isn't right either, especially if that person is your own dad. Number 3. Daikatana. Just to be clear, the infamous Daikatana ad, which declared that John Romero is about to make you his would have been questionable even if the game had been good. But considering that the first-person shooter was egregiously bad, it was a complete misstep. The ill-fated game was announced in 1997, and between then and its eventual release in May 2000, the vast majority of the press focused on the studio Ion Storm and the game designer John Romero. Considering that Romero had worked on epic titles like Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, and Quake, it's understandable that the PR team would want to push his involvement as much as possible. Then came that ad. Created by the same artist that designed Daikatana's box art, Romero initially approved the message as he and Ion Storm CEO Mike Wilson thought it was funny. Sadly, the advert didn't have the desired effect and turned many players off of Daikatana long before it even released. Looking back some 10 years later, Romero admits that he had some doubts even before approving the campaign, and he now regrets allowing himself to be talked into it. It was a bad look for the designer in the 90s, but these days, the tagline seems downright predatory. Number 2. Microsoft Flight Simulator. On the 11th of September 2001, the world was shaken to its very core as 4 aeroplanes were hijacked and crashed into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and a field in Pennsylvania, leaving nearly 3,000 people dead and thousands more injured. It was the most devastating terrorist attack in human history, not just in terms of loss of life, but also in terms of the grief felt by those left behind and the war that ensued in the following years. Of course, Microsoft couldn't have known any of this when they ran a Microsoft Flight Simulator ad in 1995 that effectively spun a tale of a pilot flying recklessly around New York City. Even so, it still aged as well as a glass of milk. The ad, which ran in magazines to promote Flight Simulator 5.1, featured a picture of the World Trade Center, which was splashed with the words, "Remember, as you buzz the 42nd floor of the Twin Towers and rudder into a power spin recovery above Times Square, safety is a pilot's first and foremost concern." At the time, this probably sounded very exciting for gamers who would have loved to jump into a plane and pull off dangerous stunts, but these days it has a whole other connotation. And number 1, PlayStation Portable. I'm not really sure where to start this one, so I guess I'll just go ahead and pose the following question in the direction of Sony. Who in their right mind thought it was a good idea to try and sell a console by depicting a white woman overpowering a woman of colour? What were you thinking? To give a bit of background to this sorry saga, the PlayStation Portable, which was first released in 2004, came in a number of different colours over the years, but the vast majority of consoles were black. So when Sony created a ceramic white PSP in 2006, it was somewhat of a novelty. For reasons best known only to themselves though, the company decided that this was the best way to advertise their console in the Netherlands. Even at the time, the campaign caused controversy, and when images of the adverts resurfaced online, people were understandably incensed with Sony, questioning why the hell they thought, even over a decade prior, that such imagery was appropriate. In the moment, the billboard was controversial, but in today's world, where movements like Black Lives Matter are leading the charge on racial equality, and people are having to fight tooth and nail for their rights, it's downright unforgivable.